MOSAIC's Immigrant Professionals Conference is extremely fortunate to have a husband and wife keynote speaking team this year, and I know you'll find them to be both fascinating and relatable. Manu Chopra will speak first. We'll take any questions afterwards, and then Riya Chopra will share her story with you. Manu was a big deal in his home country of India when he decided to emigrate in 2003. He was the executive creative director in charge of Asia for Grey Worldwide, one of the largest and most prestigious advertising agencies in the world. He left for Canada at the top of his game, still a young man. And like many people who find success easily and early in life, I suspect that Manu thought his career in Canada would continue along the same stellar path that it had taken throughout his life thus far. When I met Manu, we were both working for a small broadcasting company in Burnaby. I found out recently that it was MOSAIC who helped connect Manu with this local opportunity, which helped him to begin his career in Canada. He truly is a brilliant guy. You'll see for yourself that he has an energy that leaps out at you and an ability to communicate that can have you laughing or crying or experiencing everything in between. I knew he could do much more than what our relatively small company could offer him. I could also see that he knew this too. Within 5 years of arriving in Canada, he cracked the local ad agency market. No small feat. From there, he went on to work with Keynote Communications, one of this country's largest ad agencies. But Manu didn't get to the top of the super competitive world of advertising agencies in a super competitive place like Mumbai by being satisfied with what he had. He had an even bigger dream: to crack the world of Hollywood. In 2014, the movie Dr. Cabby was one of Canada's top movie successes. It's a film about a young doctor from India who comes to Canada. Here, he encounters the experiences that some of you may identify with: that of not having your credentials recognized, settlement challenges, and cultural mishaps. It's a drama and a comedy, and it was written by Manu. There's a joke in Toronto that if you need to see a doctor quickly, call a cab. I'm not sure if that joke came before the movie was made or if the movie inspired the joke. This success has led to other successes, and Manu is now associate producer for Little Italy, a mainstream Hollywood film starring Hayden Christensen and Emma Roberts, due for release in 2018. I'm delighted to introduce you to my friend Manu Chopra.
So, before we begin, I'm going to ask you for a show of hands, soul-searching question. Be honest, not with the person next to you, not with me, but with yourselves. So how many of you are really gung-ho about this new life in Canada? Yeah, I made the best decision of my life. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's quite a few. Good. That's good to know. How many of you like, wonk, wonk, wonk? Big mistake. None. Do I sense some political correctness here, or? How many of you now are in limbo? I don't know whether I made the right decision or not. Now, for you, I need to tell you something. Look, I have met, of course, a lot of people, a lot of immigrants, and I'd say the good news is that most of them have done either okay, well, or really well for themselves. There are a very few, a small number who haven't done that great, and those are the people who are in what I call a state of permanent limbo, okay? Like 12 years and I'm still not sure. Have I made the right decision? So what I would suggest is give yourself a deadline, okay? 1 year, 2 years, 5 years from now, make up your minds. And then say, I am going to either stay or I'm going to go. And then go like hammer and tongs, go all out, just go all out. Sometime maybe two years down the line, you say, I think I want to go home. Maybe your children will make your mind up for you and say, no, mom, dad, we really like it here, you know? And then you say, okay, if not for my sake, for the sake of my children, I'm gonna hang in here and make something of myself. Okay, so I know why all of you are here. You are here because you think I'm gonna give you some kind of magic bullet, right? You're absolutely right, actually, you are. So let me read about it. The Magic Bullet Blender lets you mix, chop, grind, blend various ingredients or whip up entire meals in no time at all. Available at Canadian Tire and other fine retailers for $100 at Boxing Day. You could get it for as little as $39.99. Magic Bullet for success in the kitchen? Yes. Magic Bullet for success in Canada? You got to figure that out. So without further ado, let me begin. You know, when I look at this room, here's what I see. I see a lot of very smart people. People who were likely highly successful in their home countries. Am I right? I see a lot of very educated people. In fact, I'm willing to wager I'm probably educationally the least qualified among all of you. I kid you not. I also see a lot of very brave people. The act of emigrating, of leaving the comforts of your home country and coming here to start a new life is an incredibly brave act. So congratulate yourselves for that. You've done really well. So if I'm standing before this bunch of really smart, highly qualified, and very brave people, what do I have to tell you? Nothing really. Nothing. What should I say? Try the 3 Ps of patience, persistence, perseverance. You can make it. You know all of that. You're smart. So what have I got? All I got to tell you is my life story. And in the hope that that story may inspire even 2 of you in this room. If that happens, I feel I will have done my job. As for the rest of you, at least the next 15 minutes, you will have listened to a rather interesting story. So time not badly wasted. Let's put it this way. So let's begin. Let's go back to the very beginning. I was growing up as a little child in Mumbai, what was then called beautiful Bombay. And in Bombay, beautiful Bombay, I lived in this beautiful suburb called Juhu. Juhu was where all the movie stars lived, okay? And then I went to a school called Bombay Scottish. This was a school where all the movie stars sent their kids to. My surname was, and still is, Chopra. Guess what the most popular surname in Bollywood is? Chopra. Like, every 3rd person in Bollywood is a Chopra. So it was almost like the universe was saying to me, do I need to knock you on the head, dude? I mean, you need to be in the movies. How many more hints do I have to give you? So I said, okay. At a very early age, I decided I wanted to be in the movies, okay? But then, I thought Bollywood was too easy. It was all around me. I was growing up with these kids, and what? Too easy. I wanted to make movies in North America, far, far away. Now, think of this, early 80s. I'm growing up. There was no mobile phones, no cable TV, no internet. So North America in those days did not look like a distant country. It looked like a distant galaxy. I mean, the very thought of a brown guy making movies in Hollywood just sounded like the most ridiculous thing ever. So the first person who got wind of this dream of mine was my father. Now, a word or two about my father. My father was with the Indian Air Force. And years later, actually decades later, he told me he was in a department called Secret Data. He was a spy. So the thing is, this guy could get wind of what I thought of before I'd even thought of it. So he immediately got wind of my dream. And here was his reaction. My mother's name was Usha. Usha, come here. Look at this idiot son of yours. See, whenever I did something wrong, I was her son, okay? Look at this. Wants to make movies, not do a proper job. Wants to make movies, not here, like Hollywood. Idiot, do your homework. So I was like discouraged. And you know what you do when you're discouraged? You go and talk to your friends. And guess what my friends did? They all laughed at me. Said, like, nice one, man. Really, well done. They thought I was an even bigger idiot than my dad thought I was. So at a very early age, I learned 2 things about dreams. 1, dreams are precious. They're very fragile. They can be easily broken. So don't announce your dreams. In fact, when the time comes, your dreams will announce themselves. And that makes it so much more beautiful. Second thing, if no one's laughing at your dream is not big enough. And let me tell you this, I mean, that's pretty much a motto of mine. Let me tell you about 2 other people very briefly before I come back to myself. It's all about me today. so full of myself. So there was this other neighbor of mine I spoke to. He was the only guy who did not laugh at my dream. And I said, why are you not laughing? And he said, because I have a dream too. I said, what do you want to do? Oh, I want to be a jazz musician. So what is a jazz musician? I mean, he said, and not here. I said, oh, you mean? He said, yeah. I want to, conquer the world I want to be a jazz musician in the West. So guess what? 3 months ago, this guy, his name is Shrikant. Shrikant was awarded British Asian Composer of the Year and was called to tea by none less than the Queen, that nice old lady whose face we have on our $20 bill. Yes, he had tea with her, okay? So I've got some catching up to do. The other thing is my boss, who came here to Canada, listen carefully, 35 years ago, window washer, dreamed of owning an airline. Can you imagine owning an airline? Oh. You know how many people laughed at him and said that, you know what, dude, just wash some more windows and go back to McDonald's and have your lunch, Today he owns Cargojet, which is Canada's most successful cargo and freight company. With contracts for UPS and FedEx and what have you. Net worth is a mere $1.7 billion. He also makes movies. So dreams do come true. Anyway, so I held on to this dream. School, college were a breeze. I decided, okay, now it's time to find a job. India's hottest ad agency was Grey Worldwide. Okay, walk into those corridors. No need for a resume because you know what? My friend was working there. So he said, no, just come in. So started working there, and within 2 years, been campaign of the year, film of the year, poster of the year. By 25, I'm done with advertising and pretty bored. I said, now what do I do? So then some friends said to me that, Rupert Murdoch is starting a music channel. And just a few blocks away from your office. So why don't you go there and see? I said, that looks like an interesting option. So I go to this building, and guess what? It was an old whorehouse that they'd converted into their office. So I was like, oh, this sounds deeply interesting. Dude, you had me at whorehouse. So I walk in, I joined these guys, and within 2 years, this thing became the biggest thing ever. Like, one more dream I had was to get my name before I die in Time magazine. I had it in Time magazine when I was in my mid-20s, because they called this the biggest media idea to come out of Asia in the 1990s. So it was really cool. Life was great. And the coolest part about working for a music channel was this. Free drinks at nightclubs. That was the best thing ever. So, and also along the way, India being a conservative country, we had India's first ever dating game show, blind dating game show. And my wife, the woman who I've been married to for 20 years, was actually a participant there. So yes, I met my wife at India's first ever blind dating game show. So life was pretty interesting and pretty good and very smooth indeed. So after this, we get married, and my old advertising boss calls me and says, how about I double your salary and give you a car and a driver and some fancy pretentious designation? I said, oh, this sounds great. So we go back, and I'm there, and a blissful 3 years pass, doing really well, getting fat and comfortable. Oh, what's missing? Child. So then we decide we get pregnant, and then we move back in with my parents. Now we move back in with my parents, and my mother, after a while, breaks her hand. Little did I know this fracture was going to fracture the rest of my life. So what happens is we have this little conference, because we found Ria, that's my wife, instead of my mom taking care of her, she was taking care of my mom, So we decided to have this family conference, especially Asian people, family conference, we need to talk. So Ria's mother and brother were in Canada already. So I said, why don't you go for 6 weeks to Canada? Anyway, you're in the second trimester, mom's fracture will heal, you can come back, and it was all smooth and great. So she goes to Canada, time passes, and guess what? A few months later, she has notoriously low blood pressure, extremely high blood pressure, like 190, pre-eclampsia, and then the Canadian doctors give an undertaking in writing saying, if she flies back, it will be actually fatal for her and the baby. So decide to have the baby here, but guess what? Canada's smart. They said, you'll have to pay. Because, you don't have status, you're Indians or whatever. So we said, yeah, fine, how much? In those days, $25,000. $25,000. So we paid. So baby is had, and a few days pass. I'm in Thailand at a conference, and I get a phone call from my brother-in-law from Canada on my boss's mobile phone. And I'm like, what's going on here? And he says, please come to Canada because your baby may not survive. He's been diagnosed with acute kidney failure and he may die. So I max out my two credit cards. I take a one-way business class flight because that's the only one I could get to Canada. And I actually literally then had $1 in my pocket and arrived in Canada. And guess who's waiting for me there? Immigration. Oh, brown man, one-way ticket. Why have you come here? I just blasted the crap out of it. I was like, out of my way. Okay, I'm here to see my son. I don't want to stay here. As soon as he's well, I'm gonna, move back. So I reached there and I see my son for the first time, and he has a tube sticking out of his head, 7 tubes sticking out of different parts of his body, and I get a tap on my shoulder. And this was an angel from British Columbia Children's Hospital, a man called David Litterman, Dr. David Litterman, head of pediatric nephrology, now retired. And he said, I didn't think I'd be able to save your son, but I managed to save him. So I said, thank you very much indeed. He said, he will live, don't worry. So he said, just one more thing, please. Can you step aside? I said, yeah. So he said, see, you don't have status here or whatever, and emergency services cost $4,000 a day. And then there's doctor's fees, which are extra. So I said, okay, 25 grand delivery, 12, 37, 3, 40,000, okay. So he said, no, it doesn't end there. He's saying, your son will have to stay in the ER for at least another 30 days. So suddenly, I'm like looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, put that into perspective, because $1 Canadian was 35 Indian rupees. So multiply that now by 35. I was 3 retirement funds down for no fault of my own. Welcome to Canada. What a lovely start. So I spoke to my boss in India, and I said, what can you do? And he said, don't worry, I'll send you to Indonesia on this very fancy salary and things like that. At least you can start paying off your loan. Oh yeah, and before that, so we have a conference with BC Children's Hospital. And when we tell the head of finance my story, our story rather, she burst into tears. And she said to me, I'll not mention her name because she could get into trouble. She said, run. I said, what? Run. Go back to India. Don't pay. I said, no. She said, no, this is so unfair. Just go back. You know what? We'll keep sending you bills, and you can tear them up. The only thing is you won't be allowed back into Canada. And I said, no, that's not happening, man. I said, you know what? You saved my son's life. I cannot do this to you. I will pay every single cent. So, and when I walk out of this room with Ria, I'm like, such brave words, but how the hell am I, how are we going to pay this, man? So anyway, so my boss gets me this fancy job. Oh, beautiful bungalow in Indonesia, swimming pool, BMW 7 Series, chauffeur, the works. But I was surviving on ramen noodles and water because all the money was going to Canada to pay off the loan. So anyway, 1 year passes, Ria and my son Karan joined me, and then we spent another year in Indonesia. Now 2003, we have to come back to Canada because the Canadian doctors keep saying, this guy, our little guy, he needs checkups. And he was still in very delicate health. So we come back to Canada, and guess what happens? In the background, 2 things. 1, the Iraq war breaks out. Number 2, there was this epidemic, I don't know how many of you remember, called SARS. It was this bird flu-like thing, and it was killing people and was highly contagious. So the whole Asian route was blocked. Going back home was a very difficult option. And oh my God, so here we are. And the doctors say that your son's going to need something called nuclear medicine. And India and Indonesia both had not even heard of nuclear medicine. So the choice was stay back in Canada. But of course, in the past, Canadian immigration had also made us sign an undertaking that we would waive all rights to MSP for my son. So we were continuously paying. And here I was, and they said the only way you can get MSP for your son is if you show intent to migrate. I had no intent to migrate. I mean, I know I had my dream of Hollywood or whatever, but that was more America. I really didn't want to be here. So intent to migrate, and then my boss in Indonesia says, please don't come back because I can't guarantee your safety in Indonesia. I said, but this is the Iraq war, it's not the Indonesian war. He said, well, you remember there was the Bali bombings a few months ago, tempers are fraught. I can't, as a foreigner, I can't guarantee your safety, so sorry. So Indonesia is blocked. India doesn't know about nuclear medicine. So here we are stuck in Canada. Now the Canadian chapter begins. I said, but we don't have status. So, okay, let's apply for status. That's going to take another 2 years to come. What am I going to do for 2 years? And I didn't want to do this illegal stuff of, working at some Indian video store or whatever and taking money under the table. I just don't like illegal stuff. So guess what? My tracks lead me to MOSAIC. And there was this wonderful man who says, well, you have a tremendous story. I don't know what I can do. But there's this lovely lady who runs this South Asian radio station. And with your kind of radio and TV and advertising experience, maybe you could go to her, and I don't know what's going to happen there. So I go, and that's where Diana and I work together. So I go and meet this lady, and she said, yeah, I can help you, but here's the thing. I mean, we can't do anything illegal. I said, yeah, that's out of the question. Now, in those days, there was a little clause, okay? A little clause where you were allowed, even without status, to be given a very limited amount of money under the guise of so-called volunteer services. So you could get a little check. So she said, listen, I can give you $5. So I was like, the minimum wage was $7.50 an hour. So I said, 5, okay, you know what? She says, no, you misunderstand me. It's $5 a day. And I'm like, dude, I didn't gamble, I didn't do drugs, I didn't make any risky business decision. Why is this happening to me, Why? So for the first time in a long time, I broke down. I don't cry normally. I broke down. I actually started crying. I was walking in the streets and just crying like a maniac. And this lovely Caucasian lady, oh, are you okay? And I was like, oh, my wife just left me, or some nonsense like that. And then I keep walking, and then my tears dry up. Guess why? Because I just figured it wasn't $5 a day. You see, my two-zone bus pass cost $93. I was actually going to have to live on $2 a day and support my entire family. So I asked my wife, I said, what do we do? She said, you're used to it. Ramen and water. Back on the ramen and water diet. Ramen noodles, 28 cents a packet. And water, which is free. Great. So, but this nice lady, she allowed me this volunteer service, and she also said, I can get you a work permit. Now that work permit, again, there was a limit to how much she could pay me. But that work permit would get me my son MSP. And because it would show intent to migrate. By then, my son had been diagnosed with full-blown autism, severe intellectual disabilities. Today, he's 16 years old, and he still wears diapers. My wife and I have changed about 60,000 diapers, we're counting over, the last 16 years. So that MSP was needed badly. Now, during that 1 year, when we were surviving on so little, this is when you're at your lowest. Keep your mind and eye out for little miracles, little gifts that you will be given along the way. I'll recount 2. One is, there was something at KFC called Toonie Tuesday. I don't know if they still have it. My wife doesn't allow me to eat KFC anymore. She keeps me on these horrible diets. Yeah, imagine now we spend thousands of dollars giving dietitians money to starve us. Human beings are so stupid. Anyway, so Toonie Tuesday, for $2, on that day you could get like 2 little chicken drumsticks. So my wife said, we've run out of ramen, and why don't you get a $2 meal, and we'll have a drumstick each for dinner. And I opened my wallet, there's not a single cent in there. And I'm like, oh my God, for the first time ever now, I'm going to starve. We're going to starve tonight. Then I opened my wallet again, and I see a lottery ticket. Oh, I said, okay. I went up to the lottery vendor, and I said, here. And he said, you won a free play. I was like, yeah, free play, cool. And he said, you also won $10. Now, I don't know how the heck I could win 2 prizes on a single lottery ticket. Maybe he made a mistake. I don't care. I just grabbed the $10. And on that day, we ate $5 worth of KFC with fries. With fries. Okay? Second gift. Now, I'm a writer, okay? And I couldn't afford a computer. I mean, $2 a day in a computer. Like, really? So what I used to do is also, my other lunch option was those, those Lipton cup of soups? You get them for $1.60, and there's 4 little packets in there. So I used to buy those, and the people at the radio station would always say, you like soup a lot. I say, yeah, I like soup a lot. So Safeway sometimes had this game, okay, where you open these pull tabs, and if you're really lucky, you win a bar of chocolate. If you're incredibly lucky, you would win a vacation to Belize or someplace like that, or whatever. So I opened this tab, and guess what? A laptop. I won a laptop. And it was a high-end $1,600 laptop. So it's like almost God wants me to write. This is fantastic. So keep your eye and your mind open for these gifts. The third little thing was a little story that I would like to read to you, which gave me a lot of courage, a lot of strength. It's called The Fern and the Bamboo. Has anyone heard of this? Anyway, good. So then you can hear it now. One day, I decided to quit. I quit my job, my relationship, my spirituality. I wanted to quit my life. I went to the woods to have one last talk with God. God, I said, can you give me one reason not to quit? His answer surprised me. Look around, he said. Sorry, do you see the fern and the bamboo? Yes, I replied. He said, when I planted the fern and bamboo seeds, I took very good care of them. I gave them light. I gave them water. The fern grew quickly from the earth. Its brilliant green covered the floor, yet nothing came from the bamboo seed. But I did not quit on the bamboo. In the second year, the fern grew more vibrant and plentiful. And again, nothing from the bamboo seed. But I did not quit on the bamboo. In year 3, still nothing from the bamboo seed, but I would not quit. The same in year 4. Then in the 5th year, a tiny sprout emerged from the earth. Compared to the fern, it was seemingly small and insignificant. But just 6 months later, the bamboo rose to 100 feet tall. It had spent the last 5 years growing roots. These roots made it strong and gave it what it needed to survive. I would not give any of my creations a challenge it could not handle. Do you know, my child, all this time you have been struggling, you've actually been growing roots? I would not quit on the bamboo. I will not quit on you. Don't compare yourself with others, he said. The bamboo had a different purpose than the fern, yet they both make the forest beautiful. Your time will come. Never regret a single day in your life. Good days give you happiness. Bad days give you experiences. Both are essential. Calmness isn't freedom from the storm, but peace within the storm. Anyway, so that gave me a lot of strength. Now, 2004, I still have another year. I get the work permit, and I said, okay, one more year for my landed residency to come where I can actually then go conquer Canada. Now, what do you have to do in the meanwhile, man? You have to prepare. See, even resumes. Now, I was so blessed, I never had to, even write a single resume in my life. But what my friends warned me is don't write the typical Indian immigrant resume. The Canadian resume is very different. For instance, one important tip. When you write, don't say languages spoken English, say Hindi, Punjabi, Tagalog, whatever. Don't write English there. Because you know what? It's a red flag. It makes people think, oh, so you also know English, English is a prerequisite. See, things like that, these little tips that you learn. So Canadian-style resumes, and there are a lot of bodies here that will help you, friends who have been through this process who will help you. So be very smart about your resumes and how you shape them. Then what I did is in those days, online still wasn't a big thing. I collected my ad portfolio. Another thing that I learned, now this is for advertising, may not be relevant to you, but in India, you would take all your ads, oh, this is thicker than the same James's Bible. Look at how much work I've done. Here, they don't have the patience. They want to see 10 or 12 best pieces of your work, So these are little tips that I learned along the way. So by 2005, when my immigration came, I was ready. And guess what? So I had this dream, okay? There's this lovely building in Georgia, which has got this glass facade. And I said, I want to work there. I like that building. Luckily, there was an ad agency in there. So I walk in there, and this lovely woman, the creative director, Leanne, she says, I like you. I like your work. And she said, listen, but I can't hire you full-time. But I can give you 20 to 30 hours a week worth of employment, and I can pay you hourly. So I said, okay, how much per hour? She said, would $60 an hour be enough? I was like, just 1 second. How much did you say that was again? $60. Yeah, I guess it'd be okay. So life in Canada had begun. So a year passes, and she says, you know what, I need to employ you full-time now. And I say, okay, now I'm finally settling in. This is fabulous. Life is great. And she said, but we'll need to talk two weeks from now once I iron out formalities. I said, yeah, iron away, no problem. 2 weeks later, she calls me in, and she said, Manu, I have bad news. Our agency's just folded. We lost 2 of our biggest clients. So I was like, okay. So back, and I'm sending out my resumes, no ad agencies responding. What do you do? So, I had egotistical, right? Egotistical idiot. So I had these two things. I said, two things I'll never do. One, I'll never work retail. Number two, I will never sweep a floor in my life. What a stupid thing to say. So a month later, again, we have to eat, there's no money. Guess what? Take a job at London Drugs next door. Wear the uniform. Start working retail. The very first day, I was given a broom and said, please sweep the floor. This is part of your duties. So as I was sweeping, I said, I must remind myself never to make such sweeping statements. This is terrible. But I also figured sweeping was fun. And as famously wrote in that movie, no job here is too big or too small. This is all in our heads. Oh, I was some big shot manager and something, and here I am. No. Nobody looks at you that way. There is dignity in labor here, and dignity of labor. So along that time, here's what I did. Oh, big tip. This is one tip. See, what happens is a lot of people, retail is 8.5 hours, and then you have to travel to your place, etc., 10 hours. It's very exhausting. You have to be on your feet all the time. If you're driving a cab, it's these 12, 14-hour shifts. What I did was, I took half shifts, okay? I took these 5-hour shifts. I know there's less money, but the other time I spent kind of preparing, for two things. One is, again, sending out more resumes, doing more interviews for my advertising job. The other was my dream. If you remember, I had a laptop. I started to write my script. And along the way, Robert McKee, who is the world's greatest exponent of screenplay, he comes into town. Now, his workshop was very expensive. It's like, a week-long thing and really expensive. So we had a little money saved up, and typically, we have such a filmy life. I don't know. My wife, so all the money that we had saved up was the exact amount of money this man charged for fees. And my wife gave me the money, and our bank balance is down to zero. And I said, I think we're being stupid and impractical because nobody really makes money in the movies or whatever. This is a pipe dream. She said, no, it's one life, follow your dream. So I take all this money, dump it, go to Robert McKee's workshop, which I tell you was life-changing. Because then my script took on an entirely different role. It had a life of its own. It was really good. Now what happens is, suddenly I get a call, and hey, I'm calling from Cassette, Canada's largest ad agency, and we're really excited, and we would like to have you work for us. And here was the joke. I hadn't even applied there. So I thought somebody was totally pranking me. I said, what the heck is this? Or are you a telemarketer? Are you a prankster? What are you doing? No, we mean it. I actually, go in there and they give me a job. And I said, how the heck did this even happen? Apparently somebody who had worked with me at the previous ad agency recommended me this, that, and the other. So great. Now, 4 beautiful years spent at Cassette. Along the way, I didn't forget about my dream. You remember my childhood dream? I kept writing that script. In 2010, it was finally ready. And then I kept asking people, do you know anyone in the movies? Try. Those doors are so firmly shut, it's not funny. Nobody knew anybody in the movies. So my wife, again, loves bankrupting me, like I said. Oh, we had a little money saved. Why don't you go to VFS, Vancouver Film School, and do another course? Again, the importance of Canadian schooling, okay? That's really critical. So went there to VFS and did a course, and then what happens is, immediately, I was introduced through my professor to some big shot in telefilm. And from there, basically, I got introduced to my boss, okay? And my boss calls me. My script reached him, and he just calls me, and this was like a dream come true where he says, hey, I own an airline, I also make movies, and would you like to work with me? And I was like, wow, this is so amazing. The year was 2012, okay? And then we had this this Asian people talk. My mother-in-law, me, and my wife. And I said, listen, I'm living my dream, okay? I've started on this movie career. What are your dreams? So my mom-in-law said, listen, I'm a realtor, but I would really like to paint, okay? Wife, what would you like to do? She said, listen, I've been a German translator and a stay-at-home mom thanks to our child's health. I would really like to bake, okay? I said, you know what? Let's do this. Let's all pool our resources and buy a house, a dream house. So we did that. And I'm going to just very quickly recap the last 5 years. Me, Diana has flattered me enough and spoken about. My wife today bakes custom cakes, not just for children, but also supplies to movie studios. My mother-in-law is the president of the North Vancouver Arts Club and actually sells a lot of paintings. So, to cut a long story short, dreams do come true. And the reason why I told you all about this is basically, you know what? I'm not very smart, I'm not very bright. If I could do it, so can you. And trust me, each one of you here is smarter than me. So please, I believe in you, believe in yourselves. Dreams do come true. Thank you.
I grew up in Mumbai. In those days, it was Bombay. I had a very privileged life, a very privileged upbringing. I was a spoiled princess of my dad, and he was a very successful businessman. He had dealings with Germany, with Europe, and he used to import what's called high melting steel into India, and we used to sell that at a good profit because India was in those days a developing country. And I was, well, as in Indian tradition, supposed to join the family business, and I had a very cushy life. There was no need to, worry about education, worry about resumes, much like Manu. I had, in India, if you're privileged, your life path is set for you. So our grounding was not so much focused on, outward, service to others, outward, applying at volunteer positions. It was all about me, myself, and I, and this is my life path, and this is what I need to do. So, admittedly, I was not very worldly wise. I was just on that one path and very protected. I was even allowed and indulged in India. It is not very common for women to model, to dance, to, do stuff like that. It's kind of only like privileged households or households that absolutely need to allow their daughters to do it. But I was allowed to do whatever I wanted. And coming from that, and coming from not having had to struggle, had to face any hardship, then to face what I did, I realized actually, honestly, I wish that I had had struggles in my life. I wish I had a little hardship in my life, because that struggle and that hardship builds, like when you go to the gym, you work out, you build muscle, you become strong, then you can face physical challenges. If you have never faced struggle or hardship in your life, you will not be able to survive what's called the real world. And if you want to have, like Manu says, a big dream, you need to have a big muscle behind that dream. And that's one thing that lacked. And that's what I'm hoping my story will encourage you. Got married to Manu. He explained about our child, he explained about our circumstances and why we had no choice but to make Canada work. We had to. We had no choice. There was no looking back for us. Doors were closed over there. The one thing I realized during my struggle was that somewhere along the line I had let despair set in. I had let a feeling of hopelessness set in. I'd let a feeling of, oh, what's the whole point set in? And at the same time, I was trying to prop Manu up, to be strong for him, to, not let him go through the same feelings. And I realized somewhere along the line, caring for my special child, trying to run a kitchen on $2 a day, which you lied, it wasn't just ramen and water, it was 20-cent mac and cheese. It was standing at the end of the day at my local Tim Hortons, where they used to throw the donuts, and we used to take them for free, and I used to take them home, and we had a giant jar of instant coffee from No Name, and breakfast was Tim Hortons leftover donuts from the previous day, and 1 cup of instant coffee. Lunch was ramen and water, and dinner was mac and cheese, and that was pretty much life. My son's diapers used to come from a charity at Children's Hospital. His clothes, there was a colleague of Diana and Manu who had a child just a little older than Karan, so we would get his clothes from there. My clothes, my brother, he was throwing a lot of his track pants and hoodies and stuff into a bin for Big Brother. And I remember my words. I said, not Big Brother, Big Sister. we survived on hand-me-downs. We survived on charity. We survived, a friend of ours owned a bakery and a deli, and they knew our circumstance. And they knew I loved sweets, and they knew that we needed to survive. So every second or third day, they'd show up with their leftover soup and their leftover sandwich. At the end of the day, they're supposed to throw it. So we survived on charity food, we survived on charity clothes, we survived on basic kindness of strangers. People who we don't even know, that local Tim Hortons guy who said, listen, I throw these donuts, come at the end of the day, I'll give it to you. We were helped. We were helped by a lot of people. And that's why in the back of my mind, I always had it that when I get an opportunity, I would like to give back. I would like to help people. I would like to encourage people because I have been helped. Somewhere along the line, I also let my health go because you internalize. You keep the hurt, you keep the shock, you keep the pain inside. And you're trying to be strong, but you don't know how to be strong because you've never learned that in your life. And today I request people, don't internalize. Don't feel the sense of despair. Don't feel the sense of hopelessness because that is going to affect your health. My thyroid shut down. There was all sorts of health complications. And then I remember the worst birthday I ever had was August 13, 2007. I used to have an older aunt over here, and she was like a mentor. And I used to keep going and crying on her shoulder every day, saying, okay, today this happened. Okay, Karan's medical appointment didn't go so well. His numbers are not good. Manu is upset. There was a little thing about Manu that he went on antidepressants to help him through. And he was functional, but he was just mentally not available because he was just so drugged out. So I had no one to talk to, so I used to talk to her. So I woke up on my birthday, August 13th, and the first thing I get a call is from the clinic because I'd just done some blood work. And they said, please come in now. So I went. And they diagnosed my thyroid condition, they diagnosed me with anemia, they diagnosed me with all sorts of cholesterol problems, other things. And yeah, it is going to happen if you have cheap donuts and cheap, soup for sustenance. But what I also realized was, partly was my fault that I hadn't been strong in terms of strong for myself. I had been strong for others. I hadn't been strong for myself. I hadn't taken care of myself. When you're on an aircraft and they tell you all the safety measures and they say if the oxygen mask falls down, first put it on yourself and then put it on your child. They're not saying don't prioritize your child. They're saying that if you are not able to take care of yourself, you are of no use to your child, you're of no use to your husband, you're of no use to anyone. And I came back from that shock of the medical diagnosis. And I said, okay, I'll go to aunties and I'll take, advice from her. And she had been struggling with her health and she had been on a decline. And I went to, make her favorite snack for her. And I said, okay, I'll go and I'll cry on her shoulder. And I get a call from her person who was taking care of her saying, she's just passed away. So I had no auntie to go to. I had no one to talk to now. And I thought about it. I said, okay, my health is gone. We don't have money. My auntie is gone. My son's health is gone. Now what do I do? Either I can sit and I can cry and I can feel sorry for myself, or I say, what can I do? What can I do? I cannot get into my husband's brain and erase that chemical imbalance that's causing the depression. I can't. I cannot go to an advertising agency and force them to give my husband a job. That's not in my hands. I cannot go into my son's brain and undo autism. It's just not possible. I cannot go into my son's kidneys and heal them. That's not possible. But what can I do? Firstly, can I take care of myself? Yes. Is anyone stopping me from being positive? No. Is anyone stopping me from eating better? No. Is anyone stopping me from being happy just for the sake of being happy? No. Is anyone stopping me from figuring out what I really want to do in life? No. So I took first baby steps. Like I said, I never faced struggle, and this was the first time in my life I was facing struggle. So I took a decision. We had precious little savings because, when he had done his advertising, we had been surviving on ramen water, so we knew how to save. So we had saved. And I always saved with the thought that, God forbid we have to face hardship again, at least we've got some savings. And I'm glad, because like he says, that advertising agency folded, he needed to go back to London Drugs, but we were surviving on our savings. So some part of the savings I gave him for his Maki and for his VFS, and some part of the savings, it was very bold of me, but I just went and I joined the local Jenny Craig. It was expensive, but it was needed. I lost weight. I was like triple my size at that point. I lost weight, I got my health back, my cholesterol fine, my thyroid miraculously went under control even without medication because I was just so consistent with my diet. And as I began to lose weight and I began to take control of myself, I realized that because I was so positive and I was so happy just for the sake of being happy, my son started to progress. Because I realized he was feeding off my energy. And because my son and me were doing fine, suddenly Manu got that strength that his home base is perfect. You need to have a home base that's perfect. Because also what I realized was that Manu and me, we had developed issues in our marriage, obviously, because for a guy, his identity is all about his career and his success, and if he's no longer a career and success, they feel like they're a failure. And then you realize that, you feel like a failure because your son is not doing okay, because for a mother, the child is everything. So the thing is, my everything was not okay, his everything was not okay, which meant that our everything was not okay. So we were constantly on each other's nerves. I was blaming him, he was blaming me, and that's a common story. When I speak to people who are not doing well, who've newly come, the thing is, y'all are just two of you living in that same house, y'all are trying to figure things out, and yeah, it's tough, but the solution is not at going at each other, I realized. And maybe it's a mistake that only Manu and me were making, but I'm sure it's more common. But one thing I learned was, you need to be a combined unit. You need to be you against the world, not the world against you. You can't let your world be shaken up, you be at war with each other, because then you're so busy being at war with each other, you don't have it in you to fight the world. So we became a cohesive unit. We talked it up. We said, okay, this and this and this is what I'm feeling, this and this is what you're feeling, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The truth is, we do love each other. The truth is, we do have this child. We do have these circumstances. Either we decide to drown or we decide to float and to swim to safety. We decided to swim to safety. So I gave him that money for his writing course. I took the money for my diet, and it was baby steps. He was not too confident because, he had been confident in Asia, but he didn't know how to write from a Canadian perspective. But once he saw his fellow writers also struggling, they formed a community, then they used to bounce each other's work off, and he got in, friendship with his professors and stuff. And they are the ones who guided him to his producers eventually. But it took that stepping out of your comfort zone. It took that realizing what you were doing wrong. It took that realizing what you can do, And today I'm very happy to say that, yes, I've achieved my dream. He's achieved his dream. Yes, our son is still special, but he's going to a normal school. He's a well-adjusted human being. He's happy, He wants for nothing because, in those days he wanted everything because we were so messed up. But now he knows that when he comes home, he's coming home to a secure, loving home where we're together, we are happy. And that's all I wanted to share with you, that you take control of what you can take control of. Whether it is, in my case, my health, but in your case, it may be Have you written your resume correctly? Have you done that writing course? You may think that you know writing, but you do not know writing from a Canadian perspective. You may be in another industry, you may be in banking. Have you done any course over here which teaches you, the Canadian system? Have you, bothered taking care of your health? Because if you don't have your health, you can't work, you can't do anything. Have you, decided instead of out of depression, eating all of that, taking control and looking your best? Because when you go for a job interview, it's about the way you look. It's about your attitude towards life. If you have an attitude towards life of, oh, it radiates. People get that from you. When I talk to a lot of people who are struggling, I end up helping the people. I help everyone without judgment. But I tend to realize that I tend to help the people more when they have said, okay, I'm not feeling sorry for myself. I'm willing to put in the hard work. I'm willing to put in what's needed. Somehow you automatically gravitate to those people. So it's about the attitude you bring. And I'm telling you something, Manu said that he's the least qualified. I think I'm the least qualified. I'm just in high school followed by a German diploma. So if I can succeed and I can make it, any one of you can. That's it.